Princess Connect again, huh? Isn't this like the third time you've made a video about it? I mean, technically the second one was about Imagine, the composer label writing most of the music for it, but yeah, I guess so. It's also worth it, and I refuse to stop until everyone has acknowledged just how great it is. Also, I reached first place in the Japanese arena and needed an excuse to brag about it, so enjoy this now outdated clip of me reaching rank 1.
ごめんね、強くて。これでもセブンクラウンズだからさ。
It's no secret that I'm a huge fan of Princess Connect and really a lot of the franchises that Cygames creates. The writers have always been able to balance serious storylines with goofy antics in a way that I find a lot of other series tend not to blend as well, at least when we're talking about the original projects. In the case of the three I've experienced both the anime and games of, I found that the first releases hold up as the best part. Musume's first anime season, Grand Blue Fantasy's game, and obviously Princess Connect's game as well. Where things started to get shaky was with the parts that followed, specifically Musume's second anime season and the first anime seasons of Grand Blue Fantasy and Princess Connect. All of these lacked the focus and polish of what the original productions had to offer, leaving a sense of disappointment in me that wondered if it would manage to draw in any fans at all. Musume released the gacha game alongside season 2, though if I'm being honest, I didn't get all that into it, and with the anime's shoddy storyline, I was unfortunately left disappointed. But when the second seasons of Grand Blue and Preconnect came out, it was a huge relief because despite the poor adaptations from each of the first seasons, the second seasons managed to pull things up to the standard they should have been at from the start. I won't get into Grand Blue here, but Princess Connect's second season was exactly what I had wanted out of the first season, an adaptation that captured the seriousness and intensity of the actual story while still being interspersed with the characteristically goofy interactions. It isn't a perfect adaptation of the story, given that, again, Twinkle Wish was barely shown, and Mirage and the other Princess Knights were left out entirely, forcing more responsibility onto Labirissa for the sake of trying to fix what was removed in Season 1, but it does do its best to pull it together instead of retconning the problems created by the first season. I could go on in more detail about what Season 2 did right and what it did wrong, but ultimately this channel is about the music, and by now you should already know just how much I love Princess Connect. I'll admit, I didn't really notice the music in Season 1 unless it was music from the original game and not the new music made for the anime. Looking back, I don't really have a good reason for that considering just how incredible the music is, and its use in the second season allows it to stand alongside the storytelling and animation as one of the pillars that made Season 2 into one of my favorite anime of 2022. This is the first piece of the soundtrack, written by Imagine's veteran composer and resident conductor Tada Kifumi. Serving as a sort of overture to the series as a whole, the piece opens with a guitar and piano, supplemented with some simple string harmonies and wind chime flourishes. The soothing triplet-style rhythms obscure what is actually a 4/4 time signature, tricking us into believing the piece is written in some sort of compound meter instead. This obscuration is made apparent at the end of each phrase, where the rhythms must realign by utilizing what almost seems like one single extra eighth note. In this sense, Tada has captured the atmosphere of Princess Connect's story within this overture-esque theme, using the beauty of the music and its flow to obscure the true nature of what it represents. While Princess Connect is overall a visually pleasing and fun series, the underlying story is much darker and more intense than what we are initially led to believe. Following a pause, a recorder comes in to lead the main melody, accompanied by a simple descending bass line harmony from the piano and guitar. Throughout all all of Princess Connect's soundtracks, the recorder has been a recurring instrument, capturing the childlike sense of wonder within the world while also reminding us of the purity and innocence of characters like Yuki and Kokoro. This is also used to create contrast within characters who are often portrayed in a silly manner but hide deep secrets beneath the goofy exterior, such as Pecorin and Kyaru. This contrast can be heard as the strings creep in underneath, gradually building until a darker piano solo reminiscent of the opening cuts back in. We're once again obscured by the rhythms, but now the harmonies also further obscure the sound with B flat minor 9, C sus 7 over B flat, D flat 7 over C, and D minor 7 over C. The slowly rising cello line working separately from the floaty piano harmonies to create impressionistic cluster chords rather than any actual functioning harmonic progressions. We're then blasted by an explosion of romantic color from the strings, hinting at the anime's climax with some absolutely gorgeous harmonies that wind back down into a solo piano line, as if to say that this is a glimpse of the future and the journey to reach that point starts from here. It is a bit strange to call it an overture since it doesn't actually play in episode 1, but considering that it plays at the end of episode 4 following the official establishment of the Gourmet Guild, we can consider that this is the true starting point of Redive's story. And if we look at it this way, this theme and scene then mark the shift from the original Princess Connect as a result of Yui's wish, or in the anime's case, Labirista's powers. Here we have an instrumentation of the anime's first ending, serving as the overture for Season 2 when we hear it play right from the start of the first episode, setting up the series as something lighthearted like we remember, but quickly building into a more intense orchestral piece. Not only is it highly reminiscent of the previous overture we just listened to, but with the absence of the recorder and a more complex set of harmonies, we get the sense that there will be far more to the story of Season 2 than what Season 1 could have possibly prepared us for. Our sense of innocence, while not removed altogether, is much more muted and overshadowed by the lush strings, woodwinds, and piano. To accompany all of this, the very first image of Pecorin is a sweeping panning shot overlooking Landasol as she gazes upon the castle she once called home. We, the audience, now understand her identity as well as the role that Kyaru plays unbeknownst to her guildmates, and with this look of seriousness on her face with the intensity of the accompanying music, it is only natural to assume that these two characters will clash. While this did mean Yuki's story took more of a back seat this season, his story remained a necessary presence for the overall story's progression, as well as allowed for the introduction of some characters that needed to be addressed. Here we have the titular character theme for Neneka, written by the always versatile genius Higashioji Kenta. While this theme was written for the game and Neneka's introduction into the story is wildly different from the anime, the character herself is still captured phenomenally through this theme, exuding a mystical atmosphere from the very first note we hear. This is achieved not only by slick mixing and mastering work, but by the actual instrumentation as well. Higashioji smoothly blending reverberant metal sounds with the continuous harp arpeggiations to open up the track. It's hard to tell if all of these sounds are acoustic with lots of editing work done to them in post, or if many of them are simply electronic reproductions. But if we assume the former, this gives us a combination of high anvils, orchestra chimes, and two metallophones. What's interesting about these two metallophones is that while they sound quite similar in timbre, one actually plays too low to be a glockenspiel, forcing us to assume it must be a vibraphone played with very hard mallets to achieve the piercing effect. And the higher has too large a range to be a glockenspiel, but is also too high to be a vibraphone, leaving us with only one possibility outside of a custom-built metallophone, that it is a very specific glockenspiel, the Yamaha YG2500, which extends to cover the extra perfect fifth on the low end and major third on top. Hey, so editing Ben here, and after doing some more listening on that, it is really obvious that this is not anything like what I said it is. It's actually just gamelan. It's not metallophones or anything complicated like what I said, so just ignore me, because I'm stupid. Despite melodic percussion typically being a little easier to transcribe due to the limitations of simultaneous notes being played, the mixing for this character piece leaves many of the ringing sounds in a sort of washed-out, distorted space, lingering for too long and creating a crystalline atmosphere that can't be easily identified. This is quite suitable for the game and anime's different storylines, as Neneka finds herself encased in crystal in both, regardless of the circumstances under which she finds herself in these situations. This etherealistic sound also works well with the idea of Neneka's transformation and duplication abilities, not to mention her mysterious personality that contrasts the more boisterous and sometimes silly members of the Seven Crowns like Christina, Labirista, and Homare. Getting a bit more into the actual composition, the piece shifts around modes and keys very smoothly, transitioning with little effort akin to how Neneka seamlessly changes forms and floats about. We start in a simple B minor, outlined by the harp's constant open 5th chord, with only some simple chord progressions and the occasional sharp 3 to briefly shift from a B minor to B major. Interestingly enough, the setup to change into G Lydian is almost non-existent, simply ending with a slightly extended B major chord to gear our ears up for a major mode. In fairness, there isn't much setup that could have been done given that the notes in the B minor scale and G Lydian scale are the same, and so the transition feels smooth even without any setup. The shift into G-flat Lydian is also smoothly set up with some good voice leading in the melody, where both the harp and Glock lines can make a simple chromatic step in opposite directions. This then works itself backwards through G Lydian and then B minor again before continuing on with the strings in a new F sharp minor section. This mirrored action of working through certain modes and keys perfectly fits Neneka's main ability, Mirror Mirror, and despite how complex it may seem to replicate these key and mode shifts into any arrangements of her theme, have a listen to this more intense battle version of her theme from the game's second major story. It may only utilize a short segment of the main motif, rising a simple chromatic step upwards to build in intensity, but it still manages to capture the idea of her theme in more ways than a simple rearrangement would. This is the anime character theme for Kyaru, written by another of Imagine's brilliant younger composers, Nishimura Shingo. This is a vastly different take on the much heavier theme Mabuchi Naozumi wrote for the game, though this makes sense as Kyaru's character theme in the game is tied much more heavily to a specific turning point where she violently reveals herself as Kaiser Insight's Princess Knight, whereas the anime's theme is simply associated with Kyaru's innocent naivete in the care of her master. Almost in complete contrast, the two versions of the theme begin with running percussive lines, the anime's with a calm cascading piano line and the game's with a series of rising open handpan chords. Focusing on the anime's theme, this piano line runs down a pentatonic B major scale followed by the same in E major. Harmonically, this is a simple B over E to E over D, with the E pedal note giving us a bright Lydian sound and the following D natural pedal note turning the overall key sound into something more akin to E mixolydian with its flat 7th and unsharpened 4th. Ultimately, it's less about the actual key of the piece and more about the sound of this whole tone difference that give the music a sort of looser, more relaxed sound, fitting with the innocent comfort Kyaru has developed towards Mana. As the piece continues, you'll notice that it never really develops in a dark, or as the title would suggest, melancholic direction. Arguably, the chromatic B section could be considered relatively dark, but it still keeps that sense of whimsy and lightheartedness as it transitions in and out of the cascading piano sections. While I'm sure there are many explanations as to why this might be the case, case, one of the major ones is related to the anime itself in that it never really explains what the entirety of Princess Connect's world and setting are about, aside from a very brief scene involving Kasumi that never gets expanded upon. In this way, anime-onlys don't have the knowledge of why Kyaru is even so attached to Mana in the first place, and thus can only ascertain that her feelings are simply there because she had always been like this, allowing the musical atmosphere to capture only the light and innocent side of her affection. This isn't really a bad thing in and of itself, it simply means that Nishimura was acutely aware of the fact that the music had to reflect only the version of Kyaru that we have been presented with, barring any relation to the game that wasn't present in the anime. The reason I mentioned Kyaru's game theme earlier is because despite having a separate theme in the anime, her game theme does also make its way in as well. As I mentioned, the original was composed by Mabuchi Naozumi, and now with his own take on Mabuchi's original song, Nishimura Shingo comes in again to put a much sparser and heartbreaking rendition of the theme, capturing the hollowness and pain Kyaru experiences as she is forced to choose between fighting her friends or the one who supported her when she had nothing. Where Higashioji's string-heavy rendition from the game exudes a heaviness and intensity to capture the depth of Kyaru's betrayal towards the Gourmet Guild, Nishimura's is a great example of less is more, using lighter sounds and instruments in a continuation of conveying Kyaru's innocence and naivete. Rather than generating a feeling of betrayal as Kyaru cuts down her friends, the anime's version fits the ever-growing sense that Kyaru, in spite of her gratitude towards Mana, now feels torn between what she initially perceived as real and fake loyalty. While this does of course play a role in the game's story as well, it feels far more present in the anime and thus feels more appropriately captured through this rendition of the theme. The last piece I want to mention is actually a track that doesn't appear in the anime, but was too good for me not to at least play while talking over it. This is essentially the final piece of music for what we can call Princess Connect's first main story, after Kaiser Insight has been defeated and Pecorine reclaims her position as Princess Justiana von Austria. This is one of the longest pieces written for Princess Connect's soundtrack thus far, and for good reason. It serves as the finale piece that brings together as many musical aspects as it can to tie in every character's contribution to the story. Understandably, the anime couldn't feature every character, however, part of what made Princess Connect's story fun in the first place was how everyone got involved and ultimately played some sort of role in bringing down Kaiser Insight. From the start, we have some beautiful piano, guitar, and woodwinds, instruments that respectively represent memories, bonds, and the protagonists themselves. These are also mixed with some reverse piano sounds that transition into fully electronic synth textures and gamelan to remind us that, at least in the game, the characters are aware of both Astrum and the real world they came from. This later transitions into an acoustic guitar solo and then some orchestral strings, all playing under Kokoro's narration and various scenes of different characters in the aftermath of the battle. I'd love to delve into it more deeply, but it's detailed enough that it probably deserves a more analytical video, and more importantly, the reason I brought it up in the first place was to contrast it against the anime, which somewhat ironically plays the orchestral version of Tsunagumo no Te to Te o Tsunaide over Kaiser Insight's defeat, with the post-credit scene bookending Season 2 with the overture幸せな食卓をともに. Interestingly, with the inclusion of the original Princess Connect's instrumental theme, this could actually be a hint at a Season 3 or prequel anime, though this seems unlikely as Princess Connect's second major story relies heavily on Twinkle Wish's inclusion, and having a prequel would only cause problems as to why the main characters of the original never made a proper appearance in Redive. But regardless of whether there was actually a reason this track was chosen for this particular scene, any possibility of more Princess Connect will be welcomed with open arms. As much as I was able to cram a bunch of different tracks and transcriptions into this video, I feel like I wasn't properly able to convey just how well composed and produced all of these pieces of music are. If I'm being totally honest, I would love to do another video on Princess Connect's music in the future, and there's really nothing stopping me from doing so, but I think I'll take a bit of time before I actually get around to doing it again. This video's actually been a really long time coming, at least from my perspective, because as you might be able to tell for those of you who have been watching my videos, I've moved again. And on top of getting the transcriptions done and actually editing the video together, everything just took a lot longer than it would have if I hadn't been so busy with the move. As always, if you enjoyed the video, make sure to hit the like button, leave a comment down below, and subscribe to my channel. This was also a video topic voted on by my patrons, so if you want to have a say in what I talk about in the future and get access to all of the analytical transcriptions that I've done, make sure to support me over on Patreon. Thanks again for watching, and I will see you in the next one.